you describe your practice to someone who is curious but unfamiliar with it?
I'd have to say that I'm an artist, okay, for number one, but I seem to have and have worked in such a variety of disciplines and medias over the years. And I think that principally comes out of the idea that I'm driven by an idea, and I try and resolve the idea through visual thinking. My artwork is actually sort of answers to visual questions that I present to myself. So I think I've worked in a kind of variety of medium. I worked a lot in photography, installation, kinetic works, installations, video, the whole. I've made lithographs, I've drawn. I've done almost everything but paint. So I guess I describe myself as a kind of multidisciplinary artist.
Can you tell us about the piece you have in the Ottawa Art Gallery show?
Yeah, the piece that they're going to show is a piece that's never been seen before outside of the studio. It's called Waiting for the Tooth Fairy. The history of it really is that actually less than 2 kilometers from where we're standing now is the Island Park Drive. And I remember when living in Ottawa, driving down there in a thunderous, one of those torrential summer storms like this. And it was one of those high wind, lot of rain kind of situations like that. And I was coming down the parkway like that. And just on the meridian somewhere like that, there was a tree that was literally being snapped about 8 to 10 feet above the ground level. And it was just as if someone had taken it, broken it in half like that. I looked at it and I said, that's a piece right there. And I knew I'd been thinking about creating a portrait of my mother since her death in 1974. And all of a sudden I realized that the snapped tree was going to move in that direction. So having found the image, so to speak, almost by chance, I then thought about it for a long time. I thought, well, how am I going to use this tree? Well, then the tree started to actually, it needed something to rest on. So I thought, well, let's put it on a bed. So I got the tree, we got the mattress, and then the whole thing sits on a kind of trellis of iron bars, which are then held up and can be moved forward on a field of Tonka toys. So it's waiting, and the piece is called Waiting for the Tooth Fairy. And so it's really a portrait of, no, it's not a portrait, it's a piece about the relationship I had with my mother. I thought it was going to be a portrait of my mother, but it's really about the relationship that I had with my mother. And the whole notion of the tooth fairy is that I think there's that charming kind of thing that we do with children, is that we say, the tooth fairy will make it feel better. If you put your tooth underneath the pillow, you're going to get the tooth fairy is going to come by and give you a little kind of reward for having bared the pain of losing the tooth. So I think there's this kind of, this waiting for the tooth fairy or waiting for this event to happen is kind of what it's very much about.
Last year, you donated 50 of your pieces to the Ottawa Art Gallery.
Yeah.
And and one thing I read about it, you said, when you come to Ottawa, you feel like you're coming home.
Yeah.
Anyway, but you're not from here.
No.
You did talk a bit about this before, but I wonder if just more in general, what does the city mean to you?
The city's a place it was like an incubator. It was like it's a refuge, okay, for me. In some sense, it's not only, there was enough cultural activity to keep me interested. There was a lot happening at the University of Ottawa and at Carleton and down at the gallery and the National Gallery and the Art Center to keep you vibrant, to keep you in touch with what's going on in the rest of the world. That was great. But the other thing that I like about Ottawa, and this is not meant as a criticism, there's a certain kind of, you can become somewhat reclusive here. So in other words, you're allowed to be a person here. You're not expected to be part of a group or anything. People actually kind of allowed me to be an individual, be isolated. Because really, I'm kind of work in a kind of very isolated fashion. So this provided me with the opportunity of being isolated. But when people came, the great thing is that when someone was a visitor here, there was a small enough community that, it wasn't 100 people sharing this visitor, it was like 10. So you got these intense kind of one-on-one situations here that don't exist in Toronto or Montreal, right? And you got this kind of incredible kind of resource with the federal government and the city government and the provincial government all contributing to the cultural life. So it was really a very, very rich time, right, like that. And it's isolated. So when it's isolated and got all these kinds of, little aspects of it, you can actually make a lot of work.